Hello, everyone. I want to welcome you back to a new episode of the AM show. Today, I am interviewing a very, very cool lady. Her name is Natasha, and she is one of the founders of the national ice cream brand Coolhaus. Welcome, Natasha.
Well, thank you so much for having me. Glad to be here.
I am so excited to have you. And I think that starting an ice cream brand is probably one of the most exciting endeavors that anyone could choose. I mean, like, who doesn't love ice cream? And the fact
I don't want to know them if they don't.
Yeah. And the fact that you have them in so many different flavors, assortments, varieties, there's something for everyone. So today I kind of want to delve into the stuff that maybe people don't want to talk about, but because it's in association with ice cream, I'm hoping that they're going to be super excited to listen to everything you have to say.
I like that.
So the first thing we're going to talk about is branding. I want to talk about, when you started an ice cream brand, I'm sure it crossed your mind. There are thousands of ice cream brands in store shelves. What am I going to do to distinguish mine? What crossed your mind through that process and once you got to store shelves?
So, at the time that we launched, which is 10 years ago now, so kind of crazy actually, I remember walking the freezer aisle at the grocery store with Freya Streller, the other founder of the business. And I think, what we saw is there were sort of the same brands that had been sitting on shelf for decades. And they were pretty stale as far as innovation, unique flavors. It was a lot of the same things you'd seen for a long time. So we definitely sensed an opportunity to, one, create just more uniqueness in terms of that flavor experience, but also quality. There was a huge opportunity back then to really elevate quality. And that was the beginning of the time that you saw almost every category change in terms of elevating, clean ingredients and the whole kind of small batch, handcraft, artisan movement. Those were not, words that were thrown around as much back then. So I think that was a big opportunity. But in a way more importantly, actually, I think seeing the ice cream brands that were there on shelf, we just really didn't feel represented as women. These were not brands that seemed to have really any women, making the decision and leading them and being the face of them. And we didn't feel represented as millennials either. They didn't feel culturally connected to us. Ben & Jerry's is definitely an edgy brand, even though they've gotten much bigger, but that was really a brand that came out of, the 60s and more like counterculture. So I think the latter was in a way even a bigger opportunity because that's when it really gets into telling your personal story through your brand. What are people going to connect with in terms of who's behind it and how do they feel that story is special and something that they want to be part of and a culture that they want to be connected to. And I think that is something that's timeless. If you can tell a unique story through your brand, and today people really, really want to know who's behind the brand, what it is about them, what they do on the weekends, where they like to travel, what they like to eat. The more you can sort of share and be transparent, that is how people are looking to make decisions about what they're going to buy. And I also think when you have a unique story, it's truly something that can never be copied. It's a total original.
Right. And so when you guys were going through this process, did you guys have help from a branding agency or was this you guys doing it all yourselves?
So my background's actually architecture and design. Mm-hmm. So I think I found, this way to blend, two really strong passions of mine, which was design and using food to kind of as like the medium to talk about design ideas. That's kind of where I started from. And I think, for your listeners, if you can blend passions, that's where I think entrepreneurship really does become biographical, because no one's going to have that exact same take on two very specific or multiple passions that you're going to combine to create your business. So that being said, I think for me, it's something that I became interested in. And with Coolhaus, a lot of it was about bringing awareness and design to architecture, which had been really hard hit during the recession. That's when we started. But I think in a more abstract way over time, it's become using my skill set to design a brand as opposed to, traditionally architecture would be used to create buildings and spaces, which is obviously a really important job. But I think this was a great opportunity to take that and really create a visual identity and tell stories through the brand. And so I was able to really lead that process all the way through growing Coolhaus and doing the literal design myself until actually just about a year ago.
Mm-hmm. And so when you first started, how many flavors did you have?
We started with, I think, maybe 7 ice cream sandwich concepts. And then when we launched at Coachella Music Festival, we realized that we wouldn't be able to really pre-make these sandwiches for such a big event like that. It was just twice the amount of work to make the cookies, make the ice cream, put them together and store them. And then also getting them out to the desert was much more difficult. So we started scooping to order from our trucks, which is how we still do it on our trucks and at our shops. So that gave us, I think maybe 4 cookie options and the 7 ice cream options. So let's say like 11 total products to start.
Mm-hmm. And so you already mentioned one thing that has obviously stayed the same is the food truck, but along the journey, what are some things that are now completely different that customers have actually helped you decide?
I think that looking at our grocery business, which is the biggest piece of the pie, financially at this point, it's the most dollars because it's, makes the most sense to scale on a national level. There's a really interesting balance between the super unique, more edgy flavors, the ones that push the envelope, let's say the balsamic fig and mascarpone pint, as an example, or the milkshake and fries. But if you think about the consumer and really meeting their needs, they're always going to want those classics as well. And you want to be able to deliver on those. So how can you really create those classics that are timeless in their own way, but also elevate them and make it undeniable that if you were going to choose from any vanilla, it's got to be the Coolhaus vanilla. Getting the brand loyalty and drawing people in through the more adventurous side, but then giving them something that, is going to be a staple forever. And I think, when we started, and with the trucks being such a kind of out of the box way to do retail anyway, you might be more drawn toward also the out of the box flavors. But now as we get much bigger, there's no shame in elevating those classics. And in a way, it's one of the most difficult challenges. You have the most competition, sort of like asking a chef to make a soup. You have to be able to deliver on that. So I think those are some flavors that have come to us really from seeing how people shop and what they want to buy. On the flip side, sometimes we do a crazy flavor and we think it's just going to be for a PR stunt in our shops or for an event, and consumers are so obsessed with it, or our fans are so obsessed with it, that we take it all the way to grocery and we end up scaling that, and it becomes one of our best. So I really appreciate that from customers, from fans, you can learn both how to be strong in simplicity and how to really push yourself even farther than you thought you might go.
Yes, and building a community is so important. And then I know that you've mentioned in many of your interviews that it is something that you had in place when you kind of started embarking on this journey. And so how did you guys do that? Did you leverage the power of social media? Did you have friends, family? What was it specifically?
I do think social media was such a key factor in having in a very quick community that really was just instantly on the rise. And I think that's because social media was so new in the way that we think of it today. We like secured a Twitter handle before going to Coachella. And I'm so glad we did that because, things essentially went viral after the festival. And by the time we got back to LA, we had about 10,000 followers in that one day, which seemed like a really big deal. But it was because we embraced a new platform, not just because we were on social media and that's all it takes. So I think that's speaking to being pioneering, saying we're going to use something like Twitter and it makes sense for what we're doing because it creates urgency. You have to follow us to know where the truck is. You have to follow us to know what the menu is that day, maybe to get a special deal. So like that was, I think, definitely important. I think on a certain element, what I love about running a business is it does make you realize, how big your community can be. And I think for me as the CEO and as a founder, my own network is something that's really special to me. All the other entrepreneurs I've met, all the other brands we've worked with, my own team. A business like ice cream is something that you always want to talk about and always want to share. So that community does end up, really coming out for it. And, lastly, I'll say, I'm from LA. So doing business in the city that you're from, you'll like, people will just come out of the woodwork, like someone that you played like soccer with in childhood, like turns out they've been following, you know, your journey, and they connect you to someone who wants to book the truck. Or it's so just like inspiring and fun to see the ways that it can, you know, like that community can continue to reward you in your business.
That's awesome. I want to touch on the fact that you're woman owned, or that you're woman owned. So I also heard that, or I saw in an interview that you actually went through a certification process.
Yeah.
So does that mean there's a certification process to actually spell out we are women owned?
Yes, that's exactly right. Yes.
Wow.
They got it there. Some of it's paperwork, you know, to get them the details of the business or operating agreement. And then they want to meet you, you know, create the relationship with you, connect you with the community. And then they actually do an audit. They come to the office and, you know, make sure you are who you say you are. I was like, oh, are you going to follow me to the bathroom? Like, you know, what's going on here? But yeah, I think it's good because it's, you know, it's legitimate. And putting that seal that women own, which we've actually now changed to women founded and led. We got through some focus groups we did, feedback that was actually the specific part of being women owned, that people were more, it resonated with them more, which is that it started this way, and then this is who's, you know, actually running the business. But once we really started putting that front and center, the kind of traction that it's given us is just absolutely, it's bananas. You know, the way that people, that it resonates with people on social, how much more they're calling it out. We always had the story on the back of the packaging, but it shows you, has to be really simple for a consumer to understand. And, you know, in 1 second they have to get, okay, these are the people behind the brand. This is something I want to support.
So do you think that most of your consumers and biggest fans are women?
Most of our consumers are women. You know, biggest fan, I don't know, we could have, you know, a mega fan, you know, man out there, and it's hard to know on the individual scale who is the biggest, but there are more overall women fans, I would say, and consumers, but it's not like 95 to 5%. Like, I think what's great about Coolhaus is it's a brand for everybody. You know, we're making the connection with women, but we're making the connection with men who believe in women-owned businesses, or, you know, they may want to participate in it because they know their daughter or their kid is excited about the next generation of brands, and that they can also be, you know, empowered women running their business. And it's not a feminine brand. So I think that's actually been a positive point, because we're very, very inclusive. And additionally, when we've gone out to raise money, I think, you know, because just unfortunately the way it is right now, most investors, most of the people writing checks are men. It's easier for them to, I think, then relate to, okay, here's a women-owned business and there's a huge amount of women following, but I, as a man, understand also, like, I want to have the delicious ice cream too. Versus, you know, I have some friends who their businesses are very much brands for women, and sometimes there are challenges right now with raising money for that, because the men, you know, on the other side of the table can just not understand the, like, at the core, you know, what the product is really about.
Well, I want to jump into a totally different segment, because it's a segment that people don't really want to talk about when it comes to growing their business, but inevitably you have to talk about it. And that's the legal component. What legal aspects did you have to have in place before you went to these investors? And what legal aspects did you have to touch on after you met with the investors? Yes.
So we started the business using LegalZoom, which, you know, if you have a lot of entrepreneur listeners, I'm sure many have as well. And, you know, that allowed us to start the business for, I think it was like $99, and extremely quickly, and really check all the most basic boxes. I think they also had besides, like, you know, forming our LLC, they had like a checklist of like, here's like the 4 things you'll need to be able to go to, you know, a festival and sell. So super helpful, because you need to move quickly, and you can't necessarily, that's just like hiring a lawyer, even for those basic things, is a barrier to entry for some people. It was for us. And you need also it to happen, fast, because sometimes it's really about seizing that moment to get your idea out there, right? So that's how we started. We're very lucky because Freya and I, the other founder, we also were in a relationship when we started. It all happened at once. We're now married with, a son, everything, and another baby on the way. Everything worked out, don't worry. But we were lucky in the sense that I don't think I would give, myself the advice if I was, my 10 years looking back, I don't think we created the proper documents for worst case scenario. If you're going to go into business with anyone, but especially, romantic partner or even a friend or family member, when you start out, you want to decide if everything goes, to shit. I know I'm allowed to say that on the podcast. What does that look like? Because you don't want to be deciding that in the worst case scenario moment, because it's going to get a lot uglier and it's going to last a lot longer. So we didn't do that actually. And we're just lucky that, 2 years later, we finally actually did sit down and make a, operating agreement and agreed that everything was 50-50, but absolutely something to do right away. The other thing I would say is ideally, both sides put even the tiniest bit of money in, even let's call it, $1,000, because you want to have some skin in the game, that makes you think about walking away. I think most founders start with sweat equity, and that's fine, but anything you can put in that's to keep you guys there, that gives you that extra thought process if things are getting rough, which they will, I think is important. So, that took us through the first 2 years. Then we really set up, again, a relatively basic operating agreement, and the articles of incorporation of the company sort of gave everything a little bit of a fine tuning. And we did that because we were doing an angel investment round 2 years in, so that got us as far as we needed to go. And then we really didn't do that much legally, to be honest, other than probably raising our insurance needs and trademark, starting to do trademark stuff, which is more worth it to invest, by the way, when you already have a business operating, because getting all these trademarks, that may protect you in some way, but they're going to be much more interested in use. They don't really want to give as much protection to an idea or a name unless they really see someone's, running a business and making money off of it. So sometimes it's not even worth it. Just start and then get to that later when you have something to show for it. And then in 2017, we did a bigger private equity deal. And then that's when things get a lot more complicated. So then you probably need, I would say at that point, a more experienced law firm in your segment. Before that, we just had a general counsel and raising private equity dollars for it was a food focused, fund, which is who we work with now. You really need lawyers who specialize in probably knowing other consumer, investment companies, seeing what the market is, what kind of deals are done, and hopefully helping you prepare for potentially an acquisition at some point.
Okay. And I just want to ask this because I'm not sure if listeners will understand how to choose a lawyer, but how important was it that you actually like the lawyer that you were choosing? Yeah. Was it all about smarts? They know what they're talking about. They sound like it, or was that not enough? I have to like them.
Right. I would say our general counsel who we brought in, who still does legal work for me personally, that I think was really important. It's a very personal, it's a very boutique relationship. You really want to know that they have your back. You also have to choose, I guess, what your style is. I'm looking for a lawyer that's has my back and totally can protect me, but is also fair and reasonable and won't keep negotiations and discussions dragging on forever, that their whole mission is not to intimidate people by being an a-hole. That's just not what I want to project about myself or my company either. So I think understanding what their style is and how they've done business, is really important. And it is a very personal relationship. So I think the more you can like anyone that you work with, it just makes it easier to do business. I would say then, as far as now our more kind of specialized law firm, I think, a similar idea where they're going to be representing you. So how do they go about doing that? And what is the way that they have found is best to get to ideally a win-win for both parties? Just making sure that there are systems in place that that you can really, to be honest, just afford the services. I mean, it's a very expensive process. Do they have the right team that if you have a small issue, you don't need one of the partners working on it and billing $700 an hour? Do they have systems in place if you're smaller where they can still service you without running up an insane, an insane balance on your business?
I love it. I love those tips.
Yeah.
Okay. So the next thing I want to talk about is leadership. How did you grow your team? How did you get them to be on board with your vision and your long-term vision? And how did you find those people?
So I think, for me, I do think leadership is very spiritual. You're talking about having a dream, having a vision, and then convincing people to spend most of their waking hours, with you, helping you accomplish that and achieve that dream. And sure, there's a paycheck involved, but you can get a paycheck at, many different places. What's going to make someone stay? What's going to make them, feel that your dream is also theirs? And for me, so much of it is about transparency, giving them access to the really important and special and exciting things that are going on in the company, having them participate in those components. No idea doesn't belong. I've had a lot of people who work with me over the years say, I've never felt like I can really share some of this, like, even if it's just like something totally not in their department. They're in sales and they had a marketing idea, or they're in operations and they have an idea for, packaging change, that they really feel heard, because why, as the leader, would you ever not at least have an idea come across your table? What if it's something special, or what if it gets you thinking differently? It's just, to me, brings more like value to the team that you've hired. And I think also, especially in today's world, like, people's jobs are very much their lifestyle. It used to be, like live, work, kind of like very, very separated, and that balance was defined more like by boundaries. And now I think people's work is their life, like people view what they do as, something that they want to brag about. And it's much more difficult to fully turn it off because of, technology. So you just want to make sure the experience is absolutely like the most fun and connected it can be. So we do a lot of things, outside of the work. We just had like a company bonfire. We, did a fun kind of like bowling and drinks. We did a whole retreat where we rented a house in Malibu and spent, 3 days together doing different exercises. So I think you really, really have to think of it from their perspective and what's going to feel special to them, what's really going to resonate with them, and what's something that it literally is impossible to walk away from. And then the last thing I'll say is, I think I'm a big believer, ironically, that when you're having the most fun is when you work the hardest, because you don't notice that you're doing the work. It's just so fun, the day goes by. That's how I feel about my own job. So just make it fun. Like, it doesn't have to be super serious, especially in my line of work of ice cream and cookies.
Well, I want to close out this podcast by asking you 2 really important questions. 1, what is your favorite ice cream flavor?
I'll tell you only my favorite of the moment, because it really does change, I guess, depending on my day and my mood and all that. I would say, like, if I could have anything right now, I might go for our cookie dough sandwich, which is so classic and so good. I think it's the best cookie dough out there. Again, elevating a classic. For a pint, I would probably go for milk and cookie crumb, which is like, not like cookies and cream. It's like the Oreo completely disintegrated on the bottom of the glass of milk and then turn that into an ice cream. And then I would probably also want a bite of something dairy-free. Our dairy-free ice cream sandwich and ice cream line is incredible. I think right now my favorite is peanut butter fudge chip.
I love that. I told you I love the molten chocolate. That's my favorite, and I'm sticking.
Amazing.
And the last question is, there are lots of minorities that are wanting to start businesses.
Yeah.
And the reason I ask about minorities specifically is because maybe they have a little bit more of an uphill battle.
Yeah.
Especially when they're seeking investments and so forth. So what words of inspiration or advice do you have specifically for people who fit the minority bill?
I think you have to lean into it as one of your biggest advantages. I think I could totally see how it seems like you know, oh, no one's hearing this voice. No one's listening. They're not putting dollars behind it. There's not value. Well, that's like you are the one who can change that, because, you know, there's as big an audience of so many different minorities, for example, in the US. And if you think about, you know, for years and years, and it's getting a little better now, it still has a long way to go. So much of media was only projecting the perspective of one audience, you know, and yes, different minorities were you know, were watching those shows or participating in it, but it didn't really connect. And if you can be that person who can really tap into that audience and create that authentic connection and that loyalty, I mean, it's just good business. You know, that's a much bigger opportunity than those who will just project the same perspective over and over. There's a limitation there. It's going to end. And I think we're just scratching the surface of what kind of value that can bring if you're able to, you know, create a business that can really speak to that audience.
All right, everybody, you heard her. Natasha says, whether you're a minority or not, you're going to have hurdles and barriers, but there is nothing that should stop you, right?
Indeed.
Alrighty, well, I want to thank you so much for being on the podcast. Tell everyone where they can find your lovely ice cream.
So we're in about 7,500 grocery stores all around the country, everything from Whole Foods, Safeways, Kroger's, Ralph's in Southern California, Publix, Wegmans, Gelson's and Bristol Farms in Southern California as well, more boutique markets. Our trucks are in LA, Dallas, and New York, and we have a scoop shop here in Culver City, LA, and in Dallas. Just follow us at Coolhaus to find out more.
Awesome. All right. Thank you so much, Natasha.
Thank you.